Hello, Escalante Eagle community. This is Ian Lennox, school counselor, coming at you live. I was talking to Mr. Voss, and we were talking about the current situation and how folks are dealing with stress. And we thought we would get some messaging out to you. We're going to do a quick presentation that we did with all of the staff members. It talks about dealing with stress and things we can do to kind of manage it at home. And we invited Kristen Spiegel and Teresa Jennings to do the presentation for us. Teresa is a social worker at the high school, and Kristen is a therapist in town. And they are the experts in this field. So I'm going to pass it off to them and hope you guys enjoy.
Hi, Eagles. So this presentation is based on the neurosequential model in education, which is a neurobiological approach to trauma-informed care created by Dr. Bruce Perry, who's a leading child psychologist. It's used in educational settings and clinical settings all around the world, and we have a number of staff in Durango 9R being trained in the model currently. This presentation is specific to how stress from COVID-19 is affecting all of us, looking through this trauma-informed lens. So the first part is that this idea of social distancing is really a misnomer, and really we're physically distancing, but we need to stay more emotionally and socially close than ever before. And we're going to start off with a quick, funny video. I think little doses of humor have really helped all of us get through this, so we hope you guys enjoy.
Because of coronavirus, you are going to be quarantined, but you have a choice. Do you A, quarantine with your wife and child, or B,
That's amazing.
We enjoy that every time we watch it. I hope you did. So part of, in addition to the Bruce Perry information, this slide is from Lisa Dion with the Synergetic Play Therapy Institute. And what she talks about are that there's 4 threats to the brain. And so when we have a threat to the brain, we don't feel safe. So whether we're aware of it or not, part of what's happening to all of us right now is that we're not feeling safe when we have a threat to the brain. And so one threat to the brain is physical safety. So of course, during this time, we're all worried about our physical safety with people being sick and what happens with people from the coronavirus. The next threat to the brain is the unknown. And once again, like, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know when we're going to be back in school. We don't know when we're going back to work as we know it. This unknown is a threat to the brain. Another threat to the brain is incongruence in the environment. So part of incongruence in the environment is the idea that it can be internally, like if I'm feeling something, but I'm pretending like I'm not feeling it. So I could be smiling even though I'm nervous inside. That's an incongruent in the environment, but also just information that we're getting. So from, all the different states are doing different things. We're told one day we have to do this and the next day it changes. So those are incongruencies. And then the last threat to the brain are the shoulds. And this is a big one for all of us. I think for you as parents, there's a lot of shoulds around, oh, I should be able to parent my child and work, or I should be able to teach my child or get my child to, do this or that. And then, so when we should ourselves, we are getting away from our true selves. We're looking at what is somebody else wanting us to do? How do we think we should be? When really we know ourselves and we can trust ourselves. We know what we need. As a parent, what you need to do, what your children need, and it's going back to trusting yourself. But with these threats to the brain, it will make us feel unsafe. And so then it impacts us and we get more tired because we're having to work harder.
The one thing that's important for us all to acknowledge is that stress isn't necessarily bad. Doses of predictable, moderate, controllable stress throughout our lives is actually how we become more resilient people. There's always these ideas of, you're going to take a class on resilience or teach a skills group on resilience, but really what builds that is these experiences throughout your life that are predictable, moderate, controllable stressors. And so kind of a silver lining almost is that if your family is pretty resilient to stress already, and this COVID could actually seem more like a resiliency building event. So, you know, maybe it's like we know what we need to do, right? Like we need to socially distance. So it's predictable, it's controllable. We can stay home, we can make these good decisions. Maybe we're low risk groups, and all that can make this feel more moderate. And so there is an opportunity for all of us to come out of this more resilient and more able to handle some of life's bigger stressors down the road. Of course, the flip side of that is if you've had a lot of unpredictable, extreme, and prolonged experiences of stress in your life, you become more sensitive to stress. So even little tiny pieces of stress can send you into, say, the fight, or freeze mode. And so what we don't want to do is have this feel like an unpredictable, extreme, and prolonged stressor for our children, right? And so I'm going to show some examples. So some ways to make this feel more controllable, moderate, and predictable is listed here. So things like daily structures, family meals, and we're going to talk about all of this at the end of the presentation, but these are ways that you can make this feel more manageable and make it be more of a resiliency building event. On the other hand, things that could make it feel more chaotic, not having any structure, kind of comfort eating constantly, consuming too much media, not getting outside, not exercising. I mean, a big one is connection. I mean, like we said in the first slide, emotional connection is like one of the most important things right now for everybody. Or being very negative and get really stuck on kind of like, this is a horrible situation. You know, those are ways to make this feel much more stressful, and we become much more vulnerable to the effects of stress.
So another concept that Dr. Perry talks about that we really like is the state-dependent functioning. So what that means is that based on your state of arousal is how you will think, how you will act. And so if you look at the strip there, on the left-hand side on the bottom row, it says calm, then it goes to alert, alarm, fear, and terror. So those are your states. And then going up and down in each row, it talks about what your thinking is in each state, and that actually your IQ goes down. So if you have an average IQ of 100 to 110, when you're in a calm state, as you go up the arousal continuum, you actually get, as Dr. Perry would say, dumber. And so our ability to think and problem solve changes. So if you look, say, in that alarm state, which I think many of us are in that state, at a minimum right now, is that our cognition or how we problem solve is going to be more emotional. And our IQ has actually gone down at 80 or 90 IQ if you have an average IQ. And then as you move up to fear, you get more reactive. And again, your problem solving and how you think is more in a reactive state. And so all areas of our functioning are state dependent. So our thinking is state dependent, and even how we feel reward is state dependent. So on this next slide, we are going to show you a little bit about the state dependence of reward. So what we mean by the dependence of reward is what feels rewarding or calming, what feels good to you based on your state. So if you're calm and you're doing things that you believe in, your purpose, that's going to feel rewarding. As you get up to the alert state, being in relationship feels rewarding. When you're in that alarm state, that what feels rewarding are sweet, salt, fat, sex, and drugs. And I think a lot of people have kind of been joking about this, but people are like, oh man, we're eating terrible, or we're drinking more. And but it really, part of that is that's what feels rewarding when we're in this state. And then as we move up to, say, to fear, that's all you want to do is relieve the stress. So that's, you know, in that fight or flight mode, when like someone runs, you just want to get away from something. That is your relief of distress. So everything is state dependent on how we feel, how we think, what we find rewarding.
And I just want to add one thing to the last slide real quick is, you know, I think as we think of like IQs diminishing, also our ability to problem solve really diminishes. And I think something we've heard a lot from teachers and parents is, students aren't able to do the amount of work they typically could do, or they're not even really able to get through their emails to figure out what they're supposed to do. And it's really the state-dependent functioning of when we're dysregulated, we're not as smart, we're not able to do as much, and we're not able to problem solve as much. So needing things to be very clear, very concrete, that's really important for our students when we talk about education right now.
And Teresa, when you're on this slide, I think one of the things that's important for people to know is there's also hope in this. You're not like stuck in your alarm state. You're not stuck in your fear state. Part of what Ian's going to be talking about later is how do we regulate through this? Because we can move ourselves down the arousal continuum from alert to calm, or from fear to alarm. And so there's things we actually can do to help us. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about.
Yep. So there are three main ways that we're able to regulate. So the first one is through somatosensory regulation, and that's regulating the bottom part of your brain first. And it's really all about using your senses. So things like breathing, walking, running, dancing, listening to music, those are all strategies that regulate the bottom of our brain first. The second type is cortical modulation, which is regulating the cortex first to calm the rest of your brain. And this is something, as adults we do, I think, quite a bit. And that's like kind of that self-talk, like it's gonna be okay. This is gonna end, we're gonna figure this out. And I think, one thing Dr. Bruce Perry talks a lot about right now is that alone isn't enough for anyone now. So we need to be doing, using cortical modulation strategies, but we also need to be incorporating more somatosensory regulation. And then the third way is through dissociation, which is, I think can seem kind of confusing, but when you think about listening to a presentation like this, how like you're totally focused and then maybe you'll start daydreaming for a minute and then you'll come back in, or you'll check your phone for a little bit and you come back in. That's kind of your body's way of regulating by checking out, by daydreaming, by dissociating. And interesting, a way kids do that often is through video games or watching television. So it can be this way to actually get that regulation by just sort of checking out and going into that fantasy world.
So like Kristen said, there is hope. We can stay regulated as adults and help our kids become more regulated. So a lot of the things were on this last slide, but what Kristen and Teresa talked about with our staff was the concept of dosing and how that is super important now, especially because we're all stuck at home. So dosing basically means, like, instead of, like, for me, mountain biking is a huge way that I stay regulated. So I'll go on like a 2-hour mountain bike ride when things are normal, and that will help me feel really good. But right now, that's not really helping me as much. I'm having to find different ways of doing things for smaller amounts of times. So like taking like little doses every 15 minutes or every half hour. So I'll, just walk away from the computer for even just 30 seconds and like, do some push-ups or something. So dosing talks more about small little breaks throughout your day that you can do and your kids can do at home to help you stay calm. And like I said, a lot of the things that you might have been able to use before might not be working now. So trying to find other things that seem more simple, like listening to music and things like that can help. So on this list here, I'll just kind of run through, and these are just some ideas to throw out there. So first one is daily structure. So like, I know I've talked with lots of kids and families, and kids are waking up at 2:30 in the afternoon and staying up till 3 in the morning. And it's like, yep, they have some freedom, and if they can do that, great. But like maybe some sort of structure to, like, having a meal with the family, or like having an hour set aside just to do schoolwork. Those little structures can be awesome. And it could also be, it can be hard to do. So like you have to kind of stay with it. Family meals, that kind of goes with the daily structure. Limited media, especially at night. So if kids are like on their phones right before they go to bed, it's going to be a lot harder for them to go to sleep. So like limiting their access to that, and your own as well. Exercise is obviously awesome. So have the kids go in their Google Classroom and do their PE workouts, or go outside together as a family and do whatever. And again, it can be just small little chunks. It doesn't have to be like a hour-long hike. You can just go walk around the block for a half hour or something like that. So kind of changing the way we do that. Connecting with people, I know it's hard to do right now, but like even if kids are just texting, or if you're like zooming with family, or human connection helps us stay regulated. So we need that. So that can be part of your dosing, like maybe having your kids call one of their friends and talk for 5 minutes or something like that. Helping others, like I've seen signs around town like saying thank you to like the first responders, and like those are cool projects for kids to do at home. Or just like maybe if your neighbor needs help, having your kids help them with that. So that helps kids also feel connected. Sleep hygiene, that kind of connects to the structure and limited media stuff. And like I said, a lot of the kids I'm talking with, sleep hygiene is affecting them, and they know it because they're exhausted. So maybe just like having that conversation with your kids at home and saying, hey, like, what if we like bumped back your bedtime till 10 o'clock instead of 1 o'clock? Or just because those definitely have, that sleep piece has a huge effect on everybody. And the last one, which can be hard, staying positive and future focused right now with all the unknowns, like Kristen said, like we don't know what's going to happen next year. We don't know what it's going to look like, but trying to frame that in a positive way for yourself and for your kids will help kind of prevent going to like the worst case scenario and stuff like that. So yeah, just dosing, like I said, like little chunks of time throughout the day and using that, and yeah, getting creative with how you use that with your families and kids.
Awesome. And I think, Mr. Lennox, are you going to include little tips in the weekly memo for families on some dosing strategies?
Thank you for reminding me, Teresa. Yeah, so in the community newsletters, we'll add little tips for families and stuff like that each week, just as a reminder. And again, it's just a reminder. It's not like you need to do this, but like just sometimes, even though you know the information, it's good to have your memory jogged. So be looking out for those in the weeks to come.
Great. We hope you all found this presentation really valuable, and we are going to end on a fun, happy video.
At first I was afraid, I was petrified. I didn't get why Mom was suddenly always inside. My daily naps were now cut short and sneaking on your bed was done. There's no more barking at the mailman, what's a dog supposed to do for fun? But now you're home, and it's pretty fun. We played fetch for 7 hours in the backyard in the sun. I get belly rubs and treats, I never have to hold my pee. I don't know what a pandemic is, but it sure is good for me, so let's go. Let's walk out the door. We've already had 4 walks a day, and we'll probably do 3 more. In a time of stress, you can rely on man's best friend, and well, I hope the world recovers. I'll be sad when this all ends. On the bright side, the pets will thrive. Every day that you are here with me is the best day of my life. If you stay, I won't eat all your shoes. I'll even stop the indoor poos. The pets will thrive. The pets will thrive. Hey, hey.
All right, thanks for watching, Eagles. I want to say thanks to Teresa and Kristen for helping out. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me through email, and hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Thanks for watching.